Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. It is a bit of a brisk one out here this morning. We're well into fall and snow is on the horizon. So I'm gonna get down to work today. As you can see behind me, the sawmill shed is nowhere near keeping snow out, but at the very least, we got the posts in the ground. Last time around, you would have seen me cutting down a few trees, and well, here's one of them. This tree is 36 or 37 feet long, if memory serves me right. And last time around, I was talking to you about some decisions I had to make. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, whether I was going to try to flatten two sides of this with the sawmill and then put it up on top of the posts all in one piece, or whether I was going to cut it into sections. Well, after a bit of thinking over a few sludges, I've come to the conclusion putting this log up onto those posts by myself in one 36-foot length is probably not going to go well, and it's certainly going to be more work than it's worth. So I'm going to cut it into pieces. Today, I'm going to cut it into two pieces. The big piece we're going to make into a four-sided piece of lumber. We're going to cut the four sides off here with the sawmill. Now, with that in mind, the piece after I cut it will be longer than the sawmill, the log that is, and so we will have a little bit of an overhang. Now, I don't think that's going to be a bit of an issue, though, because I'm going to show you something that one of you told me about in previous videos. Some of you out there mentioned, after you saw me cutting beams that were longer than my sawmill, that I can just remove that last bunk so that when I cut a flat edge, I can then continue rotating it onto that flat edge and I don't have it sticking up with that bunk. And so I'm going to try that today. In just a minute, we'll take that bunk off and then we'll cut this log to length, and then we'll go ahead and we'll put the log up onto the sawmill. I will cut it into a beam, and we'll see how that goes. Now, one other thing I'm going to mention here. I'm not quite sure yet, and I'll have to make this decision in the next few minutes. I'm not quite sure yet whether I'm going to do a full timber beam, meaning it's one piece of wood, more or less cutting the bark off and then calling it good, or whether I'm going to slab it or cut it into dimensional pieces and then put plywood in between it. I've done that in the past before. The back beams there on that saw shed, I put plywood sandwiched in between the 2x8s or 2x10s, whatever they are. And that's just to increase strength. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to do that yet. I think what we'll do is we'll get this cut to length. We'll get the log up there. We'll square it off, make it into a cant. I'll see how big it is. And at that point, I'll make the decision whether I'll cut it into pieces and then put plywood in between it, or whether I'll leave it as one whole piece. So that's what we're up against today. In total, we will have 4 sections of beam up there. Notice the big openings here. Those will be the bigger beams, and then the smaller ones between the posts on the ends. So 4 beams in place. I think overall that'll just be more manageable for me. They'll still weigh a heck of a lot, and so even with their reduced length, it'll still be an effort. But I'm not afraid. We'll get it done. Here we go. can't tell you how much easier that is with that bunk removed. If you saw previous videos where I had it in place, I was doing a lot of shimming and, well, maneuvering of the log. I'm gonna now allow myself to cut all 4 sides just by rotating it without that bunk. Thank you to whoever it was who mentioned that to me the first time. If it's you, make sure to remind me down below in the comments. Thank you. Well, there we have it, folks. I ended up with about a 9 by 12 inch beam, and obviously looking at it, some of the bark are on the corners still, so the corners aren't sharp. I could probably narrow down that width to around 8 inches by 12 inches, and that would get rid of that bark. I'm not sure I'll do that at this point. The original idea I had was to give it the rustic look, the whole log look. But the more I thought about it, the more I talked to all of you, the harder it would be to nail off and secure to the posts, as well as securing to the rafters. And so I decided I would square things up, and this is what we're left with. So maybe I'll go by, I'll narrow it up, maybe with 2 more passes, not sure, but I think at this point that's good to go. Now, a few things that made life easier on me today, as I mentioned earlier, was not having the bunk there. Now, oftentimes I'm reading comments, I get a lot of suggestions, and wherever I can, I try the suggestions. That was one of them. Thank you again, hats off. That saved me a heck of a lot of effort. I've tried milling long logs like this before with that bunk on, and it is quite a bit more shimming, quite a bit more maneuvering, and that was a walk in the park, as they say. Having this was also very convenient for me today. I didn't have an awful lot of room in here, and I don't have a lot of room in here. So having the track mini skid steer there, very, very nice. Tons of lifting power, and as you could see there, I can turn that thing on a dime. And so I really like that thing for small areas like this where I don't have the option for the tractor to fit in too easily. So next thing on the agenda, I gotta get that log up here. I'll get that milled, and then when all of us are back together, I hope to be planning on getting these up on top of the posts. Before I do that, please, someone out there, give me the reminder. Sandy, put your layout lines on top of the beam for your rafters before you put it up there. If you've ever forgotten, and what I'm talking about is the pencil lines, if you've ever forgotten to put the pencil lines before you put it on the posts, well, that ends up causing quite a bit of a headache, because then you got to move the ladder down every few feet and put the marks. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you will very shortly if you come back. So anyways, that's going to do it for me here today. As I have mentioned in previous videos, I genuinely appreciate you being here. So I would encourage you to come back for the next episode. I'd also encourage you to check out the build series here. It's been a bit of a process getting here, and I think it's going to end up being a good project when we're all done. If you like this video, make sure you give it the like-a-roo. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.